a very empty phrase out there which you hear time and time again from various CEOs thinking that this is the answer, just to trot this phrase out, people are our most important asset. It's true, which is the problem. My problem is the casual kind of glibness with which this is just thrown around these days. Because it's one thing to say this, it's a completely other thing to better live and to walk this statement. Unfortunately, in our sector, there are companies who do manage, I think, to do a better job of walking the talk than others. Four Seasons is obviously one of the most globally recognized brands for really delivering through on its people rhetoric. Residor, which some of you will know from this part of the world, has had great success empowering its employees through its Yes I Can program. Marriott is probably the best known of all, really treating people as its most important asset, and is a consistent year-on-year winner of one of the best employers to work for in the States, regardless of what industry sector you're talking about. The problem is, for every Four Seasons and Marriott, there's a load of companies out there that really don't follow through and don't deliver. The statistics back this up. If you start to look at employee engagement, as Gallup has, Gallup runs an annual worldwide study of 142 countries of employee engagement, and as you see, is made for great reading, with 11% of 13% of the world's workforce feeling engaged. Just to explain, someone that's not engaged is lacking motivation and less likely to put in extra effort. The ones you really have to worry about are the actively disengaged. The actively disengaged are unhappy, unproductive, and they spread that negativity through the organisation. Out of interest, here's the number for Sub-Saharan Africa, second to bottom. And that number for South Africa is actually 9%. Under-engaged, yeah, 9% engaged. Multiple people have done studies that shows that employee engagement drives customer satisfaction and service standards. Gallup ran a study with the very creatively titled General Services Administration in the US, which showed that engaged employees directly led to increased revenue through customer loyalty. To borrow Bill Clinton's manifesto, it's the people, stupid. Take care of the employees and they'll take care of your guests. Other companies which have found this, I think, proven this to be true, JetBlue in the States, is my microphone going? Virgin is another one that treats their employees as a route to great customer service. In the US, Caesars Entertainment, a huge gaming giant, ran a 2-year program to up its employee engagement. They upped employee engagement by 20%. What they also found, without even trying, is that customer satisfaction went up by 10%. So I think most people will get this. Sorry, I'm going to end up down here. Most people get this, especially once you start putting the financial ramifications around it. Four Seasons has 3 Ps, people, product, Ps to profit. Whitbread in the UK, they'll Premier Inn hotels now. And Costa Coffee has this on their website as part of their vision and mission. Those companies that get this are making talent management a true part of their ethos, their culture, and their strategy. How we best manage employees is constantly changing. You can't apply the same old tricks, as Horst Schulze knows too well. Horst, when he ran Ritz-Carlton, came up with ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Now Propeller, he's fully recognizant that you can't treat employees as you did 50 years ago. Other examples of companies in our space that I feel are doing a good job these days. Wynn, regularly acknowledged as a great place to work in the States, in the gaming sector and hotels. In New York, Union Square Hospitality Group has a mission to try and ensure no one works more than a 50-hour work week, which in the restaurant world is pretty hard to accomplish. Out in Asia, in Hong Kong, Swire Group has come to the market in the last few years with a new breed of hotel, and they're having a fresh attack at how to best manage their people at the same time. So my last comment I'll leave to the author Simon Sinek. If you haven't read Start With Why, I suggest you do. Simon has a great quote which really crystallizes employee engagement leading customer service. So with that as our backdrop, let's move into our discussion panel. Pleased to be joined by Brenda Macrise, Lindiwe Sangweni-Sido, Marcel Kubilski and Anna Rongberg. And I will start off with a couple of questions. I welcome questions at any time someone has something they want to interject or ask a question. Please raise your hand and we'll take questions from the floor as we go through the discussion. Alan, let's start with you perhaps. Just in macro terms, how do you rate the hotel industry in terms of engaging employees and thereby promoting great customer service?
You're asking the question in the South African context?
Generally first, and then in the South African context.
I think generally hoteliers understand the need to create a happy working environment, to ensure that guests, the staff are happy, because that obviously infects the guests. And I think we've seen from the comments that you've put up there that that's the truth. In South Africa, I think we probably would score about 60%. You would get it right about 60% of the time. But in most hotels you'll go, you can feel that there's some elements of the correct attitude coming through. I think there's also amongst South Africans, Africans generally on the continent, they're generally quite happy people in terms of their natural disposition. And that comes across, and that can save the day on many occasions, even if the service might not be, or the service standard might not have been reached in a circumstance. But you will find that because of that friendly disposition, the guest will forgive even the worst accident or service fault. So I think people are aware of it, perhaps not enough.
Lindiwe, as someone who's worked at Hyatt, Southern Sun, running your own hotels now, how would you rate the industry as one way of engaging its employees?
Thank you very much. I would say that generally most of the larger hotel groups have got it right. They do focus on looking after employees in general. Talking from my own experience, I worked for international companies where the focus of people, I'll talk about my most sort of furthest away experience, which was Hyatt. And Hyatt in the US and Hyatt in South Africa was very focused on people and the development of people. We hired for attitude when we opened in Rosebank. And we preferred to take young people who not necessarily had hotel backgrounds or the formal hotel education, which is also quite common in our African countries. But by hiring for attitude, I have walked into the Hyatt today and still found employees who were hired good nearly 15 years ago. Just to demonstrate that when the hiring is done correctly and you look after your people, you have a winning sort of solution. Employees today are not like what they used to be. They either like it or they don't like it, so your statistics on engagement and disengagement are quite fascinating to me, and beginning to, as I think about it, reflect what we see. We have in South Africa what we call learnerships, where a lot of young people are just desperate and don't know what's going to happen to them in terms of being hired. And you see just already when you take them in as potential employees, the focus is really to train and to provide skills either for your own entity or for outside. It's how you treat those employees that is usually the winning combination. They're very sensitive to treatment in terms of uniforms, simple things like how nice or how lousy the uniform looks. Lunch breaks, which in my day there wasn't a thing called a lunch break. People know their rights. And so I think companies are far much more in tune, especially in South Africa, with first of all what the basic conditions of employment are. All of us are here. I think there are very few who are playing and flying below that radar screen. But for you to have a winning formula, you have to be totally engaged with your with staff, and not many companies do surveys, I think, that really do a proper dipstick. But when you're in tune with your staff, your employees, which I think most South African companies do, you have a winning situation.
Marcel, City Lodge, are they all happily engaged?
Hopefully we bear out better statistics than those, Chris, but I think ultimately, if people don't know what their role is, then it's very unlikely that they're going to be engaged. And I think quite often we get tied up in our daily round, and I talk about line management, and there's certain targets to meet and things to accomplish, and it's not as if consciously people play second fiddle, but ultimately there's maybe a bigger fish to fry, I can put it like that. So what happens is that people get sort of tunnel vision, and they do their jobs, and they don't fully understand how they contribute to the greater scheme of things in the company. And I think that leaves people feeling disempowered, and ultimately leads to that lack of engagement that we see. There are ways of obviously addressing that, and that's what we would tend to focus on. Service to our mind isn't something that's just about attitude. There's a whole sort of deeper underbelly to service that is required to be in place, and that's all around processes, procedures, technology. All of these things blend together to provide the guest with the service experience. And you can have people with the friendliest attitude, and yes, that does help out on occasion. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if a guest feels that there are inefficiencies, then they will forgive it once, twice. But ultimately, the service that they're receiving is a result of that. And I think essentially, if people can see the bigger picture and everyone pull in one direction, we've got a program in place called I'm Kind, and obviously that's being kind to our guest. It's the company being kind to the staff. It's us being kind to the environment and the communities within which we operate. And it's creating that environment where people feel, I have a bigger issue here than just my job. And I think that is helping us address these issues. Obviously, when I talk about processes and procedures, it's not only operational, it's also within the hotel, the career pathing that we do, the selection processes, choosing the right people, and all of these things have to be present to get good service and to have engaged staff, and because of that, have good service.
Brenda, what's your take on things when you're coming from skills training?
Thanks, Chris. Let me lecture on some of the comments made by my fellow panelists, and really look at the role that we all play in trying to advance people in the hospitality industry. So I'm going to talk briefly on the skills organizations that are available, that are meant to address the skills gap and the inefficiencies, the deficiencies that we might find. Now, as employers, the region, two on this side and possibly a school, they pay a levy, a skills levy, as employers, 1% of their turnover. Most of them pay and forget about it. We leave that money, and we'll see to finish what we do with it. Because what should happen is that when they've paid that levy, as employers, they need to get 20% of that money to train and skill their workforce. Okay? Having done that, the 20%, we then have an opportunity to give them another opportunity as employers for them to access discretionary grants, which takes 80% on pivotal and 20% on non-pivotal. And really, when you look at it, is we're looking at learnerships, we're looking at bursaries, we're looking at work integrated learning. And let me talk about work integrated learning experience, because if you hire for attitude, no amount of training is going to help if what you're looking for is people understanding the products that you're offering. Okay? Now, there is no way, and we've seen, and we've been part of it as a CAT, that the teachers that teach courses in hospitality, in tourism and travel have never been exposed to the hotel environment. So they teach, but they've got no clue what they're teaching. So we accommodate and we create a program for the teachers to get to have experience of a hotel, so that when they teach, they can teach with the same passion and it translates, and they can transfer that to their learners. Equally, I think South African industry in the hospitality should create opportunities for their employers to experience a product differently from being an employee, so that they have an appreciation of that product, because they have an appreciation of the product as an employee all the time. So expose them to them having an experience of being a visitor, another guest. There's a guest, so that then they can appreciate why it's important to serve someone with integrity, dignity, and with a smile. But I want to emphasize the point around the role played by employers, because I think unless the employers take the mantle and start to access these resources that are available for them, and so that they can turn the corner, we're not going to make headway and create the environment that we're looking for and increase our percentage. The schools, on the other side, then need to join forces with employers to create courses that can be accredited, and the youngsters can take up those courses.
So that's the skills, but just stepping one step before that, is the sector as a whole something that's seen as an attractive career option by people in this part of the world? And Alan, you're around hotel school education. I mean, are you inundated with applications, or?
Look, there's no shortage of applicants for hospitality studies, both the public and the private hotel schools or colleges. The problem is that often it's not the first choice. It is, they can't get into the program or the degree course that they wanted to, which would be their first choice. So they'll say, well, okay, I'll settle for hospitality studies or tourism hospitality studies. So still, as yet, it's not seen as a profession of preference. And I think that is something that we need to work on really urgently. But on the other hand, if I take the chefs, the culinary students, and I see that the work that's been done by the South African Chefs Association, and this has only been in the last maybe 20 years, that they've really brought chefing, or being a chef, into the limelight as being something worthwhile doing. And if it can be done for the chefs, basically the cooks in the kitchen, it can be done for people who work in a hotel, who can be seen. And in many parts of the world, it is an industry that is there for everybody. And the beauty of the industry is that there's room for everybody, from the most inexperienced, unqualified, without skilled person, all the way up to the most sophisticated manager, marketer, and accountant. So, we're in this. We need to make it more attractive and not just glamorous, which is what a lot of the students come in. The others that are coming into the industry say, oh, I want to get in there because it looks glamorous and I want to work in this glamorous environment. So it is a problem. It is definitely a problem. It's a problem that we need to find a solution for.
Yeah, please.
Just to continue on what Alan was saying, I think certainly I do agree with the glamour that a lot of young people or just anyone entering the industry, associate the hotel industry with. I think the main challenge that has continued to remain is that we haven't really created different specializations to demonstrate to an individual that once you've really entered the hospitality industry and you enjoy it, you can specialize in finance. So you could possibly have entered as a junior debtor's clerk. You didn't have much more than a trick. But if you were using our branch money correctly, we would, in the planning of our sort of training programs, identify those individuals who are likely to stay with us because they enjoy being there, and invest in them. So you could specialize in finance, you could specialize in chefing, as Alan has just brought up, marketing. We don't look at that, all those different specializations. I think we've tended as an industry to always look at it as a very general industry, and you kind of are lucky if you have an employee who grows and tumbles with all the different departments. But what do we do? And I don't want to sound like it's something that we are focused with, but it's certainly a thought process that we're engaging ourselves with. What do you do at a senior management level to ensure that your senior managers are well skilled and maybe one day can become the financial manager of a hotel simply because you invested and you were able to take them through a BCom as an example, or marketing individual who came in as a very junior clerk putting up flags and branding, but has the capacity to study marketing and become a proper marketing manager. So I do think that there's room for that type of thinking in our industry.
Yeah, it's interesting because the previous session on branding, I think Kareem Sheltou from Marriott was talking about having cross-functional employees in these jack of all trades. And I mean, ourselves, some of your properties, limited service, I mean, you have jack of all trades. I would imagine someone cleaning away, checking in.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have that because that's our business model. But essentially, I think just from a hospitality management perspective, there's certainly, I think, room to, let's call it a quasi-profession, but to professionalize that level of management in our industry. And as you say, the chefs have done it very well, as have others. I also sit as a director on the Housekeepers Association. And we are also trying to professionalize housekeeping, because all of these, as you say, these streams will need to be explored. There are career streams within hospitality that need to be articulated. People need to understand where they can go and study, what training is available, so that all of these can become careers of choice, and we start attracting people to the industry as a first choice. And whether it's hospitality companies being noted as employers of choice, just so people understand this isn't a fallback career. This is a serious opportunity in an industry that, and let's face it, in our country there aren't a hell of a lot of industries that are showing growth prospects. That I can have a career, I can have a career path, and I can develop. And I think we need to show them that this is a professional industry. They've done that very well overseas. If you look at the offerings of the Cornell, for example, it's not rehashing the same old subject matter and more of the same. These people are at the cutting edge, whether it's the use of technology, bringing financial metrics into our business and exploiting that, and big statistics. These are things that we need to be looking at, and people need to understand that I, as a professional, can contribute in that industry. I'm not just going to go there and do whatever.
Bradley, yes?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really need to attend to is, it happens all the time everywhere else, but I think it's more pronounced in this country in the sense that we're very level and status conscious. So the private institutions that provide courses rank very high with employers, and we frown upon the public institutions. And there's no link and a strong working relationship between employers with the public institutions, precisely because employers look at those public institutions as offering inferior education or even courses. And even the kids who go to those institutions then come out, their self-confidence is very low. Because they've also gone into it not because of anything else, but because there was no other alternative. The barriers to entry are very low into hospitality. So it requires a mind shift from all the stakeholders and the role players in hospitality, from the private institutions, public, and the employers to really come up with a model that addresses even the status thing, because you've got a lot of young people sitting in the FET colleges, lots, who come out looking for learnerships, but employers are very reluctant to offer learnerships from for those kids, precisely because we view those public institutions as inferior. So it's something that we really need to attend to.
I'd like to add something. Whilst I agree, I also disagree, because there's always the exception. And I'm aware of public institutions that are highly thought of, and that the relationships with industry is very, very strong. And that in Johannesburg and Cape Town, I can vouch for that is the case, and I know Niwe, who sat on our board, will vouch for that as well. But you're right, of course, that is the general perception. And it is a dangerous situation. However, yesterday we had a session on exactly that, on the schools and the level of education and what's being delivered to the industry. And the feedback from the industry was that they were not happy with what we are delivering as hotel schools. And they let us know quite clearly that they were not happy. And what they are not, and I mean, let's be quite honest, in anybody's career, it's lifelong learning. And it's about learning every day, and it's about improving your skills and your educational level every single day of your life. And those are the things that I think we are missing. Where the industry was telling us, they need people to be trained in the operational skills, the waiters, the cooks. Well, that happens at the FET level. The management happens then at your UOTs or universities, where they're bringing you get into the diplomas and the postgraduate diplomas or the advanced diplomas and the degrees. But the industry themselves, and that's what our response to the industry was, that there was not enough coming back from industry, not participating at the coalface, coming into the discussion when we're having the discussions about curriculum and recurriculation and where we're going forward. Not enough was coming from industry to tell us this is what they want. And I think that would help a lot, because it's no good telling us after the fact. They need to participate with us as educators up front, because it's easy enough. Although the curriculum is managed by the Department of Education, it does make room for that input from industry.
Okay, I think we had a question in the back, Keith.
Yes, sir. As a hotel investor, this human capital thing, what you're talking about is one line item in the P&L, payroll. That's all. So that's all I'm looking at is payroll, and is that number correct, incorrect, above, beyond budget, and so forth. I'm wondering if the group could talk about how you engage an investor in these people-related issues. Because all I'm going to do is bark to the operator, the guys who are sitting on the other panel, about how to increase or decrease those numbers. So how do you engage an investor in these people issues? Can you monetize it? Can you show me a number that tells me you're doing better or worse in the people part?
Who wants to have a go at that?
Let me start with that. Then I'm going to talk about the Redison Gautrain, which is one of the products that I'm part of. And I'm an investor in them. When I know that they have invested in people and I see the numbers growing, and I know we're doing something right. And that's how I connect with the numbers, because when we engage with the team, management team, and we keep on asking questions around what are we doing with our marketing team, for instance, because those are the people that drive the revenue for you as for the organization. So even if you are looking at that number, you always want to make sure that the people are producing at the level that you as an investor are expecting that rate of return on that investment. So there is a connection. You can't avoid it. But at the end of the day, is you are happy with the numbers that are being produced because you have agreed with the team that these are the numbers that are going to meet for this financial year, and we don't deviate. If there's any deviation, then something must happen. So we monitor on a strict basis how the product is performing, and it can only perform because we are investing in people to make sure that they give us the numbers that we're looking for.
I mean, obviously there's a particular return on investment that we would look at when we training people, when we're recruiting, and all of that is going to come through to the bottom line. And if you don't have the people in place, if you feel that there isn't the human capital in place that's going to be able to control costs, to give guest satisfaction, to deliver as required on what's been budgeted for, then essentially, I guess as an investor, you're going to ask the question: it's well and good me investing in this building or in this property, but at the end of the day, my return is going to be stymied by the fact that there's a bunch of people around who don't have the capacity to deliver, or perhaps the will to deliver. And I think as an operator, the operator has to ensure that is the case. And how do they do it? By looking after the things that we've been talking about.
Probably you would want to know the numbers first. And so we would have a tendency to maybe benchmark according to different entities, and usually say that if you're anywhere between 27 and 30% of your total revenues, your payroll is in line. But that's from a numbers point of view. I think I want to say there's a direct correlation in terms of the investment in your staff, guest satisfaction, and your return on investment. And I think owners need to be actively engaged, as I hear Brenda is, with what those guest satisfaction records are telling us. I know at the Birchwood for a fact that when we see our guest satisfaction on staff, I'm talking staff specifically, we look at all aspects. Were you happy with the conference? Were you happy with accommodation? But were you happy with the staff? The minute we start hitting the high numbers, anything from 90 up in terms of that guest satisfaction, the retention of guests coming back is definitely higher. So there is a definite correlation in focusing on guest satisfaction, investment of training, which sometimes is not looked at or frowned upon, but it has a direct correlation in terms of that return on investment for yourself.
I wanted to look a little bit at motivation and how, bear in mind you've got an owner breathing down your neck, trying to keep that payroll number the same. How do you motivate these people to get the most out?
I think one has to deal with cold-hearted investors. And that's the
Like me.
No, that's right. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we're going to develop our industry. It's having the investors with a cold heart and the will to invest in this industry. Otherwise, there are no jobs. So, in my view, I think it's about productivity. And the way that you get that productivity is to better train or teach your people. The better education they have, the better training they have, the more productive they will be, on the one hand. On the other hand, if you are fair and just, and you run a good, friendly, well-managed operation, you will get the results from those employees as well. Call them human capital, call them employees. At the end of the day, I've worked in many hotels, and I've worked in hotels for many, many years. And every hotel is like a little world of its own. It's a family that works together. And I'm sure all my colleagues who have this experience, including you as an investor, sir, will agree with that. And the best trained people are the ones that will give you the productivity. So if you go back to this morning's discussions about Africa and developing new products in Africa, one of the questions that arose was, do we have the human capital available? Do we have the skills? Do we have to bring in skills from other countries? Well, the question is in South Africa, particularly, and we're talking a South African context at this moment. We do have it all here. We have the schools, we have the people, we have the people with the right kind of attitude, and we have some great managers. So I can't see how we can actually fail if we really put all the right elements into place.
So invest in South Africa. What about how are you motivating these guys? I mean, particularly, again, it came up this morning, the millennium generation of customer, but there's also the millennial employees, and as we saw on the slides, what you used to do 10 years ago may not work today. What changes are you making to accommodate the millennials in terms of how you motivate your people?
I think they want to be empowered. They know what they want. They want to be empowered. They don't want to be micromanaged. I think that kind of management style is long past. I made a note here. How can I say? They know what they want. They're out there. There's no real difference in the kids that are coming through. I mean, from my own experience with kids coming through the schools, often I look at them and I see myself in those kids. They're not that different. I was also, I knew what I wanted and I knew how to get it, and I went after it as best I could, and I don't think there's any difference. And I know that in this industry it's dynamic and it's changing with the times. And it's doing that on its own because times are making that happen. That's my view. Maybe not very scientific, but nevertheless.
I think as we speak of empowerment, I think it's about not second guessing your employees all the time. Give them the tools to make those decisions when they need to make the decisions. And then you'll get them going and being passionate about what they're doing. And I think we tend to babysit them and think that they cannot do certain things. We have to be there all the time to hold their hand. When you just a little bit give something to them because you've seen the person being able to take responsibility and executing the decisions correctly, you give again. And that's really all the time give the tools so that people can make the decisions. And I think it helps to change the attitude.
I think also if you look at, and it's maybe something we don't do particularly well in this country, if you look at a group like Ritz-Carlton, they will take people and develop them laterally in a position. So quite often we find ourselves, and maybe particularly in companies where there's a flatter structure, in order to retain the person, in order to motivate them, in order to keep them around contributing, you tend to maybe put them into a management position. Now this person isn't necessarily a leader. They may not want to be, and those maybe aren't where their strengths, particularly at that time of their life, are. So what happens is we promote this person into a position whereby they essentially fail, and they do a lot of damage to the other staff that are working with them and to your business at the end of the day. The Ritz-Carlton example, in developing people laterally, they are empowering people, they're giving them additional skills, additional knowledge, but at the end of the day, they're moving them sideways to a point where that person either says, well, I'm quite happy to be a receptionist, but I'm a receptionist grade 6. So I'm earning remuneration which is reflective of my input, my skills. This is a person who can step in as a receptionist and take control of the situation that you would normally have to call a manager in to sort out. Okay? So the guest doesn't have to wait around for a manager because this person has been empowered and has all the skills to produce what's required. Should it come to pass that they then feel that they've developed necessary leadership skills or that they have the necessary leadership qualities, then certainly they can be moved up to the next level. But then you know with a fair amount of certainty that they're going to succeed there. And you were talking about exiting people from defining career paths for people. Why can't someone be the very best housekeeper that they can be? I'm not saying be satisfied with that, but almost, I can develop my expertise here, and should it come to pass that through additional skills that I've gained, I can move to another level, well and good. But all the way along the path, that person has been delivering and adding value and giving that return on investment. And I think that's
Maybe
maybe
another question from the floor.
Yeah, I had a question. Have any of you ever faced a unionized environment where it's very distrustful between the employees and management, and you had to try to promote and sustain engagement when there wasn't any? When, if anything, the engagement is with the union, the loyalty is there, the identification is with the union, not with the organization. I'm curious, how do you do that?
Well, in our country, some years ago, history is quite politicized. Our shop floors were very politicized at one stage. And the scenario that you described has been often seen in our hotels. Again, it's about communication. And the only way you can break down that barrier is through communication. There is no other way. And negotiation is part of that communication process, but you cannot just decree. You cannot manage by decree. And I don't know if there's ever been a time that you could. Perhaps there was. But for me, it never worked. Communication was the only way to resolve those issues. The trust issues will only come about once you keep your promises. When you make promises, keep them. Otherwise, then you will never have the trust. And that works both ways. And that's why a hotel, in my view, has to be a very disciplined environment. And the employees are happiest in a disciplined environment. And I'm not talking about regimented, I'm talking about disciplined, where everybody knows what the rules are, what they should be doing. Everybody is motivated enough to do the right thing all the time. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I have two examples of being engaged. Unions are a part of South Africa, and I think if you're looking to invest, you shouldn't be the investor who gets nervous around unions. We have a very strong constitution that recognizes all parties, and I'm the sort of manager who says bring them on. They're part of the environment, and you need a healthy environment. They also keep management on their toes. They keep us watching that we're fair, we're just, we're abiding by legislation, etc. So I always welcome the unions. I have a very small hotel called the Soweto Hotel, opened 7 years ago. Small contingent of staff, no more than 40. Maybe half of those are permanent. And the union, one of the major unions approached employees to try and unionize. And up to this day, they have not been able to fully unionize. And yet, I insist on the recognition and making sure that the employees feel that they have the right. But the big thing is communication. Talking to your employees, engaging with your employees, and making sure that they understand that you are the first point of call. The minute there's a breakdown between management and staff, the next point of call is always the union. The other example is a much bigger environment where we have nearly, let's say 600 employees, permanent employees, and then casual learnership environment, excuse me. So we manage about nearly 900 people at Birchwood Hotel. Very highly unionized. And this is over a period of time, 15 years. And again, we give them a lot of space. we draw the line in the sand. But for as long as we continue talking to the union, the employees always know that they have a direct line to us if they choose. So if you come across as an employer who is fair to all, who represents unions as well as non-unionized employees, I think it works for a perfect environment.
We have another question.
The question that I have is, like, aside of the issue of processes and procedures, which I think necessarily one in terms of also the contributors to show that also I'd just like to find out how would you reconcile putting processes and procedures aside, how would you reconcile, I think the statement that Alan made earlier on about pestering employees or people will give you productivity. And another school of thought which the likes of Richard Bronson of the Virgin Empire subscribes to when he says that, look, I recruit for attitude because I can always recruit skill. How would you reconcile this?
No, I would disagree with Richard Branson. No, I think when you talk about training and development, when you talk about education, attitude is part of that. Is training people to have an attitude. It's not something you born with, it's something you can get. So I believe in that. And I would say that at least 30% of all training should be about attitude. And if you train somebody to have the right attitude towards meeting deadlines, the right attitude towards presentation, the right attitude towards respect, that's what's needed.
There is room for operating procedures, standard operating procedures, because again, coming from an owner management situation like a small hotel, like Soweto hotels, eventually you need to have policies and procedures, standard operating procedures in order for there to be consistency. You will always see that you will suffer from consistent inconsistency in your service levels if you don't have your standard operating procedures. So I do agree with the attitude, but it must be complemented with a well-structured environment where SOPs are available for training purposes.
That's what I meant about disciplined environment.
Yes.
I wanted to pick up on one other point from the previous session, which is technology. I mean, 10 years from now, maybe this session should be aligning service standards with technology management goals. I can imagine being able to check in with this program, probably just get my key out. There are certain jobs which are probably going to go by the wayside. How do we reconcile that? Marcel, particularly in the limited service sector, there's a lot of efficiencies you can create through technology. So how do you embrace that whilst managing your human capital?
Well, we do, and I think we always look for those efficiencies. Obviously, there's always going to be a place for the human contact in our business. Certain businesses have tried it where it's only an electronic interface. You don't see anyone check in, check out, and maybe that has a place. But I think ultimately, certainly in our level establishments, there's always going to be that human interface. But I think we should rather embrace technology in terms of the efficiencies that we give in other areas, and rather than shy away from it because it's going to cost jobs. I think, as I say, ultimately it may. But potentially those are jobs that weren't really good jobs anyway. I think that gives scope to develop people in areas where they can contribute more and they can grow more.
Probably technology plays a bigger role currently in South Africa in terms of your booking processes, that your international traveller and your domestic traveller is looking for efficient ways in which to make their bookings, so there's a lot of room for development there. Technology plays a big role in your property management systems, that you're able to reconcile your revenues and draw good results and reports, so there's a lot of room for efficiencies there. I think technology plays a big role in your procurement environment, in your financial environment. So there's still a lot of room in terms of how we engage, even in our staffing environments. You know, you can engage with your staff on a WhatsApp or an SMS, as opposed to having a long line of people standing outside of the HR office, as an example. And probably a lot of employees will gain a lot of satisfaction. It is a balance in a country like South Africa, and I think I can speak for other African countries, where we're always balancing where we can offer and create jobs, but at the same time give the investor the return on the investment. So probably being the environment which is about people coming back for people coming to check in because they know the name of the front desk clerk. We probably have some years to go before that is the environment that will become fully automated. People still like to know there's a heartthrob behind the front desk.
Heartthrob. That guarantees customer repeat. Yeah. Okay, my last question before I open up to the floor is, who's responsible for this stuff in the organisation? Who's ultimately responsible for taking care of human capital and aligning with service standards? Brenda, do you want to?
Yeah, I think in most organizations, it's left solely to HR directors, which is human resource director. And in most times, because it's sitting with the HR director, no one else is bothered with it. So the HR director is the one who must make sure that it permeates in the entire organization. And I think it's one of the challenges that we have faced even with the HICA itself, when we wish to engage with the owners and managers of hotels, is that they will bring low-level person who deals with these issues because it has not been elevated the level that it's supposed to be. Most of the time, it's you delegate to someone junior because it's a soft issues. It's human resource skills. It's not important. But I think that it's happening now that people are beginning to realize that it touches every aspect of your business, and you can't leave the HR director alone to keep on pressing. Everyone from the board down should take responsibility, and if you are looking for the numbers that you're looking for, you need to put your 2 cents worth of effort and time, making sure that all these things happen, and it's not just left to one individual and assisting HR.
Marcel, in your company, is everyone looking at you to?
Well, look, we've got close to 2,000 employees in 3 different countries, and I've got a staff of 4, so it's a line management function. And I think you're quite right. It belongs with line management. Line management needs to drive it and reap the rewards of doing it correctly. All too often it doesn't happen. I think that's really where the challenge is, because like I was saying earlier, line management has maybe a different view on things. It's really the training there that gets them to understand that if they make people accountable, if they hold them to their KPIs, if they assess them properly, if they appraise them, if they ensure that they are developed with the right resources at hand, then their lives will be easier and they will be able to achieve. It is a bit of a vicious cycle though, because a line manager stuck in a rut where they're fighting fires. The reason is because their staff is not properly empowered or resourced, and if that's happening to them, then obviously they've got less time to spend ensuring that people are developed and trained, etc. So it's a vicious circle, and the effort has to be put in at some stage to say, let's turn this around and make sure that everyone can pull their weight and do what needs to be done. I think then the line manager prospers at the end of the day.
I certainly believe it should sit in the most senior office. It must sit in either the CEO or the general manager's office. So then it's totally aligned with whatever the strategy is of that company. It's totally aligned with the objectives. And that individual or that office always has a direct communication with those delivering. And very much like myself, you don't need an environment where management always relegates HR issues to the HR office. You actually empower them with tools, knowledge, and the HR department is simply a resource to managers if they understand that. But it's always successful when it sits in the general manager or the top dog's office.
Okay, I have one question where I'm going to put our panel on the spot, but if there's a question from the floor, I'll take that instead. In the interest of time, I've been told to wrap up. Okay, so panel, could you please give me one example of a company which you feel is really doing a standout job of aligning service standards with human capital? Cannot be your company, can be from any sector. Alan, we'll start with you.
You know, I think the good example is Protea Hotels in our industry. And I think that's possibly one of the reasons why Marriott found them so attractive. I did work for Protea Hotels but many, many years ago, and already then they had a culture of caring.
Thank you. Brenda.
Gee, I think the Arabella in Hermanos, I think they are quite good, which is part of their hospitality fund. Yeah.
But it's managed by
Protein.
Marcel?
I think I'd like to put my hand up for some of the guys that are quite maligned at times, and that's some of the fast food operators. Because when we're talking processes and procedures, people know exactly what it is that they have to do. They get the tools to deliver. Communication, as I believe it, is excellent in those organizations. The result that they probably isn't they're giving insight. And that's not by chance. And people are developed, people are grown. There's a lot of people who join the fast food industry and have that as a first job who go on to do great things because the basics are put in place and they deliver, they understand.
So take the whole fast food sector.
Well, there's some bad examples as well, but if I can talk about it, McDonald's.
Great. When I said I was going to be on the spot. Linda,
No, I have a very soft spot for Hyatt. I joined the Hyatt in my early years. I just left university, and I cried tears the day I left purely because I was just simply moving on because I didn't like the interest. And it was really because of their focus on people, and they continued to impress me in terms of how they train people, focus on people, recruitment, alignment, HR alignment throughout every single operation, worldwide, locally, is consistent, and it always has been in Hyatt because of the amount of time we take in training and
Great. On that, we'll close. Thank you very much to the panel and to the audience for your attention.